A U.S. Senate bill has just passed the committee in what is calling the Endless Frontier Act, which would authorize more than $110 billion for basic and advanced technology research over 5 years. Another $10 billion would go to at least 10 regional technology hubs. The act is being branded as a way to outcompete countries like China and create more American jobs. How does the picture of China-U.S. competition look on the tech frontier? How can the two countries compete in constructive ways? What are the concerns? I'm joined in Philadelphia by Blackburn-dwyer, president of the consulting company Grasshopper Strategies, and here in Beijing by Lyu Xiang, research fellow at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Brandon, let me go to you. The bill says, quote unquote, the U.S. has been the unequivocal global leader in scientific and technological ingenuity and innovation, but now this position is being eroded while U.S. competitors are investing aggressively in key technology fields. What do you think are the main concerns that fueled this act?
Numbers. If you look at, let's take China because that's the topic of the day. If you look at China's investment in research and development led by the Chinese government, you have an investment on a macro level year by year that is almost equal to the United States in pure dollar amount. You also have a very clear plan and direction from China to increase that amount at least 10% every single year. Well, in the United States, if you look at actually centralized government-led innovation, over the last 25 years, Republicans have largely gutted it. So the United States is actually spending less money in comparative terms on innovation and on driving new technology than we have 20 or 25 years ago. The Endless Frontier Act is an attempt to try to turn the tide a little bit, reinsert the idea that some generalized investment fund for innovation assisted by the government in partnership with universities, with research and development centers, with broad spectrum safety nets for people that are looking to be innovators, that some of those people need to take risks and maybe not realize a profit overnight with their innovations, that's absolutely necessary for the future of the United States and frankly for the world, because the United States, as it has built its technological sort of quote-unquote leadership over the last 50, 60 years, has largely shared that with the rest of the world, improving our global communities.
Yeah, Professor Liu, what's your reading of this bill?
Oh, actually, this bill is quite large, but compared with the other government spending, it's not a big deal. It's about $110 billion in 5 years. If we see it in average term, it's $2 billion US dollars a year. So it's not a very big deal. But I see it as a reaction in the United States now. Quite a few people feel worried that the U.S. has lag behind other countries, including China, in scientific research. So now this bill is about advanced research, commercialization, and education and training in certain areas. So I think it's basically we don't have any objection to such a bill. But you see, in the bill just passed in the Commerce Committee, we see quite a lot of amendment to the original bill. It's about how to defeat China. So it's something political, and I didn't expect that these political factors are coming in this bill.
Yeah, there's certainly a geopolitical flavor there. Some people have shown support for this act. For example, President and CEO of the Semiconductor Industry Association of the U.S., John Neufer, said, "We applaud the introduction of the Endless Frontier Act and thanked its sponsors for their bipartisanship and leadership in promoting American innovation and competitiveness. And we look forward to working with the Biden administration and the Congress to further this effort by investing boldly in domestic semiconductor manufacturing and research." The bill would authorize money to invest in key technology areas such as AI, semiconductors, quantum computing, and so on. Brandon, was the U.S. not investing in these areas before or as sufficiently? I mean, help us understand why the U.S. sees itself as falling behind, other than the numbers that you have described.
Investing in innovation is like investing in infrastructure. You're always spending money. That's the problem, right? You got to build a road once, you got to spend it to build it. You got to spend money to maintain that road, and you got to spend money to improve the technology being deployed on that road to keep it safe. Innovation structures, which start with education systems, which start with centers of excellence at universities, which lead out into grants and funding for innovation startups and ideas and think tanks, take money. You invest up front, and then you got to keep spending that money. It's not an endless black hole. Instead, it's just an endless way to improve your infrastructure. The United States has spent money on its infrastructure. Historically, we used to spend more, and we need to start reinvesting in that infrastructure the same way we do with roads to make sure that there aren't potholes, to make sure the roads aren't crumbling, to make sure that we are getting the fastest scientists and the fastest cars going on those roads in a direction that benefits all of us. China is using a lot of its money to invest in it. Europe is using a lot of its money to invest in technology. The United States has largely abdicated that role to the private sector over the last 20 to 25 years, and we're starting to see some move that is bipartisan back towards bringing government a little bit more to the forefront, or at least a player in the field of creating the infrastructure for innovation that really is the role of government.
Brandon, what do you think of the bill's prospect of passing the Senate and then the House and then become a piece of law?
A little complex to say. Where I think that there is some optimism is one of the things that I think is frustrating a lot of the Chinese media is the reference to China. I see that as a bipartisan play. Democrats like this bill because it's effectively a jobs and pro-growth bill that is sort of bread and butter Democratic beliefs. To get Republicans on board, they wave the flag at China, and then they say this is about security and about competition and about America and unfortunately going back to the America First type of thing. So it's really a play to the motivations of the Republicans and Democrats. If we can balance that and keep it sort of on board, we could see this bill pass. What I really expect is that it will be put into a larger omnibus spending. It'll be put alongside larger infrastructure. It will be parceled out very differently than what it is. Republicans are already asking for $20 billion of the $112 billion to be given to the Defense Department, a department that does not need more funding, considering that it already gets more than $700 billion a year. We need this money to go to the Commerce Department. We need this money to go to the National Science Foundations. We need this money to go to schools and to universities and to community colleges. So my hope is that we can see that bipartisanship carry through, but it won't be a simple process. That said, President Biden has made infrastructure and spending a major priority of his administration the first 100 days, and we could see something like this come to fruition by summer if we're all lucky and things stay on track.
Let's see what happens. Professor Lyu, the bill specifically mentions China as in the U.S. Must make these investments to ensure it, quote unquote, wins the strategic competition with China and other nations to lead the world in technology and innovation. Can you help us understand the link between China and this bill?
Okay. Actually, you see that currently in the United States, you see everything is about China. So whatever difficulties they are saying, they say, okay, it's about China. Now the so-called China threat is like a panacea for U.S. politicians. So this time again, they see China as the thing behind this bill. So it's ridiculous. But on the other hand, I understand each and every country has its right to develop, to make investment in science and technology. It's no problem. I don't see any reason for us to object to this kind of proposals. And what we like to see is that we don't need to shy away from competition. But if we make any competition, we need to abide by the international laws and the rules. So, whether we can see healthy competition between our two countries, that's a problem, and that's the thing we are looking to.
Yeah. let me go back to you, Brandon. Former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Defense and veteran diplomat Chas Freeman Jr. recently published an article at the East Asia Forum titled "Washington is Playing a Losing Game with China." He basically argues that competitive rivalry can raise the competency of those engaged, but antagonism, seeking to hamstring one another, is not beneficial. It stretches hostility, justifies hatred, injuries, and threatens to weaken both sides. Agreed?
I do, largely because I believe Freeman is sort of talking about that balance that I was talking about, that it's fine. If you want to justify spending on innovation as something pro-security, that's a pretty standard way to motivate Republicans in the United States, particularly Republicans that are moving to an obstructionist view and trying to be against spending all of a sudden after spending billions and billions and billions of dollars on Donald Trump. They're going to want to know that they have an excuse to tell their voters, hey, this is a security issue. But if we take this beyond security and we feed into the rhetoric of truly anti-China rather than compete with China type of rhetoric, we run a risk. And I think Freeman is really reminding us that, hey, competition is good. Let's be real. China is investing. We should be investing too. If we want to be one of the leaders in the world, we have to lead. And to lead, it takes money. But let's not lead by running into vitriol, anger, and distrust.
Yeah, definitely. Professor Lyu, Chas Freeman also added that Washington would be easy to spot in a game of chess. It is the player with no plan beyond an aggressive opening. That is no strategy at all. The failure to think several moves ahead matters. However, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said, recently, when the U.S. has confronted a significant challenge, significant competition, significant adversity, they've managed to come together and actually do the long-term thinking, the long-term investment, basically refuting what Chas Freeman has said. What is your take on these two different views?
Yeah, quite different. I agree with Mr. Freeman that antagonism between our two countries or between any two countries would be harmful to the environment for people to make healthy competition. On the other side, we see Secretary Blinken. His remarks, it seems to me that he misunderstands quite a lot of things, especially about the relation between China and the U.S. He see too many things about antagonism, and so therefore it might lead the relationship to kind of confrontation. So this is a thing we are not we don't hope to see, but we have to be prepared for something worse in the future.
Yeah, Brandon, I mean, at the end of the day, how can the two countries have healthy competition instead of vicious competition?
Focusing on cooperation when it's available. I made this argument a couple of days ago on your network about space, that I think that space competition is positive. I even went so far on Twitter to call it Space Olympics. Let's find ways to compete and enjoy competing at different things and celebrating each other's success and being admiring of the incredible steps forward both countries can take. And let's not devolve into the idea that if somebody else does something, that means that you're somehow losing. We can all be better off when we find ways to be self-sufficient for our economies, but still maintain interoperating global trade that actually brings us all better results, economically, security-wise, culturally. And just remember that friends can compete, and we don't have to overreact to maybe losing on one foot race. There's one tomorrow.
Well said, Brendan. Thank you. And Professor Lyu, thank you for joining us.
Okay,
and with that, we come to the end of this edition of The Point. As always, follow us on Facebook and Twitter using the handle Lyu Xiang in Beijing. Download the CGTN app to watch our show, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. On behalf of our team, thank you for watching.